June 7th, 1981, 18:32 local, 30 miles southwest of Baghdad. Major Avii Regevv is doing 480 knots at 100 feet. He is not allowed to climb. On his wings sit 2-2, 0-pound bombs, fuses live, arming wires pulled. One pass only. If he misses, there is no second run. There is no divert field. There is barely enough fuel to get home. In his headset, the calm voice of the mission commander crackles. Fox 1, no climb. Repeat, no climb. Radar horizon is your only friend. Ahead, the desert is a wavering band of tan and shadow. Somewhere beyond that shimmering line, the most heavily defended airspace in Iraq waits for him. He hasn't seen a single Iraqi fighter. He hasn't heard a single radar lock tone. That should comfort him. It does, because it means something else. They didn't see us, or they saw us too late. 3 minutes from now, a Roland surface-to-air missile battery he does. No exists will try to kill him in the last seconds before he releases. 3 hours earlier, the mission looks simple on the briefing room board. Negev Desert, 15:22 local. The operations hut at Etzion Air Base filters the desert light into a harsh, dusty orange. The air outside shimmers at 40 degrees Celsius. Inside, the projector hums, throwing a grainy black and white image of a square, dome-top building onto the wall. Tuwaitha Nuclear Research Center, the Iraqi call it Tamaz 1. You have 4 seconds in the dive. That's all, the strike leader says. He is Lieutenant Colonel Ammnon Benn Davidd, mission commander and flight lead, silver streaks at his temples, 16, patches worn pale with sweat and sun. From pop-up to bombs gone, you will be inside the umbrella of Baghdad's air defenses. Satwo, Sathri, possibly Roland near the target. This is not a dogfight. This is a timed demolition. He points at the map. The line from Etzion to Tuwaitha snakes across Jordan and Saudi Arabia, curling north into Iraq. Route length there and back is about 20 kilometers. You will fly Napother to stay under radar. That means drag, that means fuel burn. You will take off with 3 external tanks. You will drop them before the final run. He underlines a small red circle around the target. Fuel margin at exit, 7 minutes. A low murmur runs through the room. 7 minutes is nothing. A bit of headwind, a slightly rich engine, a small leak, and 7 minutes evaporates. Avii Regevv sits in the second row, helmet in his lap. He is 10 years in the Air Force, call sign Fox since he ran down a pair of MiGs in a training sim that no one else could catch. On the board, his call sign sits as Fox, one lead of the second foreship. Behind him, Captain Yossii Levyy, Lucky, his wingman, leans forward, elbow on his knee, eyes fixed. Razor clicks to a slide, 8 silhouettes of 16, nets, each with 2 giant teardrop shapes beneath. Each Viper carries 2 Mkidi 4s, 2,000 pounds each, delayed fuses 30 milliseconds. They will punch through the dome, through concrete, then detonate. You will be dropping in pairs from 500 feet, 3 degrees dive, 540 knots. He lets the numbers sink in. If you release too high, the bombs can skip. Too low, you'll frag yourself. If you pull out too late, you will not have time to get back under the radar before the next ring of SAMs. He swaps slides. Now the picture is lines and circles over Iraq. Air defenses, Baghdad sector. Radar coverage is good above 50 feet. Below that, the Earth helps us. He writes on the board, radar horizon NM2, 2. For a radar antenna 20 meters up, the horizon to a target at 100 feet is about 35 nautical miles. You will be lower than that, which means they don't see you until you are inside roughly 25 miles. He circles a ring. From this circle to the target, you are in the kill box. You will be visible. You will be in range. He turned. Radio silence en route. No navigation beacons. You are on dead reckoning and stopwatch. If someone gets lost, no one turns back to look for him. He looks each pilot in the eye. This is a one-pass mission. You hit or you go home with full bombs. There will be no second orbit. Baghdad's Air Force is not asleep. Any questions? Avii raises a hand. Rules of engagement, razor douse and blink. Only fire on interceptors that threaten the package. Do not break formation for a chase. Your mission is the concrete ring, not the MiGs. If you dogfight, you won't have fuel to reach the border. The men nod. They all know this, but hearing it out loud locks it in. Somewhere, an Iraqi pilot will take off thinking he is the hunter. He doesn't know he is already too late. Baghdad Air Defense Sector Operations Center, 16, 5 local. The room smells of cigarette smoke, hot electronics, and fear of boredom. Banks of Soviet-built consoles line the walls. Round radar screens glow pale green, thin lines sweeping in endless rotation. Air Force, Army, and civil controllers stand or sit at their posts, shirts dark with perspiration. On the raised central dais, Lieutenant Colonel Hassann al Karimm leans over a map of Iraq in chain smokes. He is Fortian, son of a teacher from Basra, graduate of Frunz Military Academy, now commander of Baghdad Air Defense Sector. His rank says power. The thin budget lines on his radar coverage map say otherwise. Report, please, he says. A young captain at the 12 early warning radar console looks up. Sector clear. Civilian traffic only. Iran border shows 3 possible intruders in the north, probably Iranian reconnaissance. Hassan nods, more to himself than anyone. The war with Iran has turned his job into a never-ending sprint. Iranian fires and fives dart across the eastern frontier, dropping bombs on oil terminals and bridges. Every day he shifts his SAM batteries east, stretching them thin around Iraq's true treasure, oil fields and power stations. The nuclear facility at Tuwaitha is not yet on his official priority list. Unofficially, he knows it is the president's obsession. He walks to the plotting board where a transparent overlay of Iraq's SAM sites sits over a map. Satwo sites, big fixed rings of missiles around Baghdad. Sa-3 batteries guarding low-altitude approaches. A French-built Roland battery, newly installed, sitting like a lonely dot near Tuwaitha. Roland still on separate network. He asks, "Yes, sir," his signals officer replies. Integration with main air defense grid is scheduled for next month. For now, they have their own local radar and visual watch. Hassan suppresses a curse. He has asked in writing for the Roland to be tied in earlier, short-range, all-weather, designed to kill exactly the kind of low-flying strike aircraft that terrify him. For now, it sits like an isolated eye, blind to his radars, and he is blind to it. Very well, he says. Remind their commander that today they remain at alert status too. They must be able to fire within 5 minutes. He knows the truth. In practice, a Roland team that is not expecting trouble can take 10 minutes to spin up. He stubs out his cigarette and lights another. The harsh smoke rasps his throat. Keep one flight of Mirage phones on 5-minute alert at Al-Rashid, he adds, just in case our Iranian friends grow bold again. Somewhere far to the west, 8 small triangles of metal and fuel are already airborne, skimming the desert, hugging the limits of his radar's geometry. He doesn't know that yet, and neither does the man whose radar and trigger finger will decide whether any of those jets ever climb again. Tuwaitha, outskirts of Baghdad, Roland battery position, 16-10 local. Captain Samirr Haddadd squints against the glare, hand shielding his eyes. The Roland battery sits in a rough semicircle around a low-rise sand berm raised by bulldozers. 2 twin-rail launchers squat behind it, each armed with 2 missiles. Stubby, white, fin tubes with yellow bands of high explosive. Behind the launchers sits the radar cabin, a boxy shelter on a tracked chassis, its rectangular search radar folded like a suitcase. Cables snake into a generator truck, coughing exhaust. Samirr has been here for 5 months, watching nothing. He is 30, trained in France on the Roland system. They called him Monsieur Haddadd in Toulouse and poured wine he pretended to sip. Back here, they call him Captain Roland and forget to allocate spare parts. He walks into the radar cabin. It is cramped, lit by instrument panels and sunlight leaking through the seams. 2 operators sit at their scopes, one for search radar, one for tracking. A phone links them to the local air defense post. We go to alert 2, he says. Start the generator, run up the system. Do not radiate yet. The colonel wants you ready to fire within 5 minutes of a threat. The search operator hits switches. The generator's note climbs, fans whir. The radar mast begins to rise, metal creaking. Sir, may I ask what threat? The operator says. Samirr shrugs. Iranian, Israeli, who knows? We are between everyone and the president's pet project. That makes us attractive. He looks out toward the shimmering heat over the desert. At the very edge of vision, somewhere beyond that trembling line, something moves. A flock of birds, perhaps. A caravan, or 8/16s, blades of light cutting under the radar horizon. Etzion Air Base, runway. 16:25 local. The concrete ripples in the heat haze. 16. A Nets fighters line up, facing down the strip, canopies open. Crew chiefs in green coveralls fuss over weapons and tanks. Avii lowers his canopy. It comes down with a heavy, final thunk. The world outside shrinks, becomes a frame of plexiglas and a yud symbology. Oxygen flows cool and dry. Fox 1, comm check, he says, voice clipped. 2, Yossi's voice replies, loud and clear. 3, 4, and so on, the second foreship checking in. Ahead, the lead foreship, Razor's Element, is already rolling. Their tailpipes bloom orange, heat mirages doubling them like ghosts. Fox Flight Tower comes the controller's voice. Windcom, you are cleared for takeoff. Good hunting. Razor's jet lifts, nose rising, wheels leaving the earth. One after another, the others follow. Fox 1 brakes, Avii says. He advances the throttle. The engine's howl rises to a scream. He releases the brakes and is slammed back into his seat as the 16 hurtles forward, concrete strobing beneath him. At 160 knots, he eases back on the stick. The Viper leaps into the air, gear folding away. He holds just a few meters above the runway until the master caution stays dark. Gear up, flaps auto, he says, not for his benefit, but to hear the familiarity of it. He shoves the nose down, descending to 200 feet as the desert rushes up. Behind him, Yossii tucks in on his wingtip, no more than 30 meters away. 2 more jets slide into position behind, the second diamond of the formation. In the back of his mind, a clock starts ticking. Time to the Jordanian border, 11 minutes. Time to first possible radar detection, 18 minutes. Time to target, 1 hour 40. Time available to get everything wrong. Constant over eastern Jordan, 1, 2 local. The sun is beginning its long slide down. Shadows stretch. The desert shimmers in bands of light and dark. The 16s are now at 150 feet, lower where the terrain allows. 480 knots indicated. External tanks bulge under the wings and belly, heavy and draggy. Fuel flow numbers climb. Avii glances down. His engine sucks kerosene like a thirsty animal. Fox Flight, this is Razor, comes the calm voice. Check fuel code only, 1 green, Avii says. They have agreed, green, yellow, red, no numbers on the radio. 2 green, 3 green, 4 a pause, yellow, that's Yossii. Avi's hand tightens on the throttle. Say again, 2, yellow, but close to green, Yossii says. My center tank isn't feeding right. Cycling the valve, there it is. The first little crack in the clean briefing lines, fuel feed glitch. In their planning, they calculated each external tank to the kilogram. The center line has to feed first if it doesn't. The jet burns wing tanks and ends up out of balance. Razor, Fox, Avii calls. 2 is yellow due to fuel transfer. He is troubleshooting. Copy, Razor replies. Fox, keep him. If he goes red before Iraqi border, you send him home. Everyone understands what that means. The mission has been modeled with 8 bombs. 8 chances to hit a single box of concrete. Each bomb has been assigned a point on the target structure. Lose 1 jet and the geometry weakens. 1 wall may remain standing. 2, keep working it, Avii says, eyes flicking between terrain. His wingman's position. He sees Yossii reach down, flick switches, try the transfer pump again. The center tank needle creeps reluctantly. Come on, you stubborn bastard, Yossii mutters. The pump catches, the needle jumps. Kerosene surges from the center tank into the belly. 2, center is feeding, back to green. Avii lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Copy, hold this altitude, no higher than 200 feet. Terrain spike at your 12 in 15 seconds. The desert rises gently ahead. In another kind of mission, they'd pop up, clear it with altitude to spare. Today, they snake around, following dried riverbeds, hugging the shadowed side of dunes. Every meter of altitude is another meter of radar visibility. Their only air cover is Razor's foreship, strung out ahead on the same ground-dugging route, and a far-off pair of 15s, angels high and distant, tasked with intercepting any Iraqi fighter that wanders far enough from home to be a threat. They do not have tanker tracks. They do not have OX. They have stopwatch math and hope. Somewhere on the horizon, the invisible bubble of an Iraqi 12 radar approaches. Jordanian air defense radar near Osirak. 17:10 local. The radar technician is bored. His 14-tall King early warning radar spins, painting the empty western sky. Most days, it sees commercial flights and not much else. Today, a thin blip appears in the southwest. Then another, then 6 more. The operator leans forward. The returns are faint, intermittent, low altitude. "Sir," he calls to his supervisor, "we have multiple low-level contacts, heading east, speed about 400 knots. The supervisor, a major, walks over, peers at the screen. Israeli jets sometimes fly training sorties along the frontier. Usually, they keep to their own side. These blips are across the border, briefly, crossing into Jordanian airspace, before angling towards Saudi. The major's stomach tightens. Track them, he says. Mark course and speed. Call the duty officer. Within minutes, the report climbs the chain. In Amman, a phone rings in the royal palace. Another line dials Baghdad. Somewhere along the route, in a switchboard room thick with cigarette smoke and humming with bad connections, a message is garbled, repeated, then put on a desk beneath 3 other urgent memos. Baghdad Air Defense Sector Operations Center, 17:26 local. A staff lieutenant hands Hassann a flimsy paper. From Jordanian liaison, he says, possible low-level formation crossing southern Jordan, heading east-northeast. Speed indicates combat aircraft. Hassann raises an eyebrow. East-northeast, towards Iran. That is their vector, sir. Nothing on our 12 yet. They may be below our horizon. He walks to the big map. Draws a line from Osirak in Jordan across the map, roughly matching the reported heading and speed. It passes south of Baghdad, more or less toward the border with Iran. Probably Iranian strike package returning home, he says. Or our own aircraft misfiled. Still he circles a point on the line. If they stay at that height, our first detection will be near 3, he says, pointing to a western airbase. Put western batteries on alert. Vector a pair of MiGs from Habaniya to patrol south of Baghdad. He considers drawing a tighter circle around Tuwaitha. He considers calling the Roland battery commander himself. He does not. He has a dozen phantom Iranian raids and false returns every week. He has limited fuel for his interceptors. He must pick his battles. He lights another cigarette. They'll show on radar if they are real, he says, more to himself than the room. The Earth cannot hide planes forever. He is right, but the Earth can hide them long enough. Western Iraq near 3. 17:40 local. The 16s skim the desert, the sun now at their backs. At 100 feet, the world is a blur. Fence posts and rocks whip past. Every bump in the terrain requires a correction. Avis hands ache, muscles locked from tiny constant inputs. On his roar the radar warning receiver, the screen is blessedly quiet. No threat emitters, no search radars. Then, faintly, a symbol blinks at the edge. Long-range search radar, bearing northeast, low intensity. Fox Flight, this is Razor. 12 is sniffing, but we're below his nose. Hold your altitudes. No one climbs, no matter what the scope says. Sweat trickles down Avis' back between his shoulder blades. He knows the math. At 100 feet, with the 12 antenna maybe 20 meters high, the radar horizon is around 35 nautical miles. For now, they are outside that. In another 5 minutes, the green beam will sweep over them, but the curvature of the Earth will block the line of sight. Only when they close to within a couple dozen miles will they pop up on the Iraqi screens. By then, it has to be too late. He glances at the fuel again, Fox 1. Green, he reports as they pass another checkpoint. The numbers still line up. Barely, Tuwaitha Roland battery, 18:0 local. The sun drags toward the horizon, painting the world in gold and deepening shadow. Samirr is sweating through his uniform. The radar cabin is an oven. Mast at full extension, the operator says. Generators nominal, system ready to radiate. Keep it in stand. By, Samirr says. We don't give away our position until we must. He walks outside, climbs the little berm, raises binoculars. Out here, 10 kilometers southeast of the reactor, the world is flat. Mud-brown riverbanks, pale dust, distant patches of green where irrigation keeps stubborn fields alive. Nothing moves. He checks his watch. It's the hour of day when Iranian phantoms like to come in low from the east, skimming the border before popping up to toss bombs. Everyone expects threats from the east. No one worries about the empty skies to the west, where the sun is a blinding disk that hides anything flying toward it. Baghdad Adok 18, 10 local. Hassann's radar scopes bloom. Sir, we have intermittent low-level contacts southwest of Baghdad. The 12 operator says, voice tight. Bearing 220, range 40 nautical miles, speed high subsonic. Multiple returns. Hassann strides over. On the circular screen, blips appear, vanish in noise, reappear closer. They are skimming under the main lobe, but side lobes and ground clutter betray them briefly. Number, he asks. 8, maybe more. Hard to tell at that altitude. He feels a cold spot in his stomach. These are not Iranians, he says slowly. Iranian aircraft would not come from that bearing. Where is Habbaniyah Cap? They are north, sir, on patrol against Iranian intruders. Of course they are. He slams his fist lightly against the console. Vector them south now, and scramble 2 more from Al-Rashid. Sound full alert for all SAM batteries in Boded sector. He grabs the phone to the Tuwaitha sector. The line rings and rings. At Tuwaitha, the duty officer is in the latrine. His junior picks up on the 4th ring. Tuwaitha garrison, he says. This is Baghdad Air Defense Command. Hassann snaps. You have multiple low-level bandits inbound from bearing 220, likely hostile. Warn Roland and all positions. They will be within visual range, and he checks the plotting board. About 5 to 7 minutes. The junior scribbles on a notepad, nodding rapidly, though Hassann cannot see him. Yes, sir, warning all units. He hangs up. He feels the radar scopes sweep, as though it were his own heartbeat. 5 to 7 minutes. He has never felt geometry move so fast. Western approach to Baghdad 18, 25 local. The desert gives way to irrigated land, the first glints of water. The air smells different. Even through the cockpit filters more humid, less dust. Fox flight pop-up in 30 seconds, Razor says. His 4 jets are now a mile ahead, just visible as faint gray shapes along the horizon. This is it, Avii says quietly. He flicks the master arm switch up. A red light glows. On his new symbology appears. Bomb fall lines release cues. Bombs are live now. There is no safe way to land with them. If they abort, they will have to jettison them in the desert and hope no Bedouin camp sits beneath. Master arm on, Yossii says in his own cockpit. The words are ritual. At 18, 20, 6, 0, Razor's 4-ship climbs, breaking the dictatorship of 0 feet. In 10 seconds, they are at 3,500, noses down, lining up on the target beyond the slight haze of Baghdad's southern suburbs. Avii holds low, heart banging in his chest. On his roar, the world wakes up. Threat symbols blossom. Satwo search radar, Sath3, unidentified emitters. The 12 is now hammering the sky, sure of its prey. Fox flight, pop-up in 10, Razor calls. Avi's thumb hovers over the trim button. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. He pulls the stick gently. The 16 surges upward, his stomach sinking as the earth falls away. 500 feet, 1020, do not overclimb, he mutters. 3,500, not 1 foot more. At 3,500 feet, he pushes the nose down into a shallow dive. And sees it. Ahead, the river gleams silver. Beyond it, in a clearing of earth and concrete, sits a gray square with a bright white dome. Tuwaitha, the target he has studied in grainy photos for weeks, is suddenly real and close and impossibly small. Fox 1, tally target, he says. Behind him, Yossii, 2 tally. Their 4-ship fans out, each pilot aligning his designated slice of the concrete ring. In that same moment, the Roland radar at Tuwaitha finally comes alive. Roland battery 18, 20, 6 local. Captain incoming, the search operator shouts. Low-level bearing 220, range 8 kilometers, altitude 300 meters and climbing, speed high. Samirr is through the hatch and into the cabin before he finishes. Radiate, he snaps, switches click. The radar antenna begins to rotate, sending out pulses. On the screen, 8 bright spikes bloom at the edge of the range circle. Incoming from the west, the operator says, voice climbing, multiple targets. Samirr grabs the headset. Tuwaitha command, this is Roland. We have multiple incoming aircraft, 8 at least, range 6 kilometers and closing. We are engaging. He drops the phone. No time, target nearest group, he orders. Lock the tracking radar slews, its narrow beam homing in on the closest 16. A moment's glitch, then a solid lock. The tracking tone buzzes, steady and insistent. Locked, sir. Arm missiles. Fire 1 and 2 on my command. He knows his envelope. Roland's min range is around 500 meters, max around 6 kilometers. At these speeds in these seconds, his window is a slit in time. Range 5 kilometers, 4.5 fire, Samirr shouts. Outside on the launchers, 2 missiles erupt in white smoke, leaving jagged lines across the sky. Inside their cockpits, Razor's lead element sees nothing except the target growing until it fills their UDs. Avii screams. Roland, he yells. A new symbol flashes, piercing, sharp. Missile in the air. His blood runs cold. He is locked at 500 feet in a 3-degree dive. Bombs armed, target sliding into his release window. He is not supposed to maneuver now. Any violent move will throw his bombs long or short. Fox 1, continue. Razor's voice cuts in, as if reading his thoughts. Missiles in air, hold your run, no jink until bombs away. Avii's eyes flick to the right, a thin line of white arcing up. Then another Roland missiles, they are faster than him now. He presses his thumb harder on the stick, fighting the urge to break off. The release cue crawls down the YUD. The little circle that means the computer is happy, the dive angle correct, the math align. He has 3 seconds to hold his nerve. 3 seconds before physics and geometry and someone else's training decide who lives and who dies. The release cue slides down Avii's YUD like a guillotine. His ears are full of noise, the shriek of his roar announcing Roland, the growl of the engine, his own breath. He forces himself to keep his eyes on the pipper. The white dome of the reactor moves up through the sight. The computer solution correcting for speed, angle, wind. Steady, steady, he whispers. Behind him, Yossii's voice is tight. 2 missile visual, passing left. The first Roland flashes past Razor's lead jet. A white spear missing by less than 50 meters. Its proximity fuse wakes too late, the 16 is already past. Dive angle breaking the engagement geometry. The missile explodes in a puff of white and black well behind the jet. Shrapnel pings off nothing but air. The second Roland, chasing Razor's wingman, dives with him, the missile's guidance struggling. Its radar sees both the jet and the ground, clutter rising as the line of sight angles down. At 3 kilometers, the tracking radar momentarily loses the lock. Beam smeared by ground returns. The missile, suddenly blind, snaps its nose slightly, correcting on noise. That's enough. It streaks a few meters below the jet, detonates on command, showering the underside with fragments. Inside, the wingman's cockpit lights flicker. A warning panel flashes, hydraulic press. He grunts as the jet shudders. But control holds. Lead 2, you're hit, he calls. Systems degraded. I stay in. Negative, Razor barks. You drop and you go home. No heroics. Fly the profile. The release cue meets the pipper. Avii squeezes the pickle button. Fox 1 pickle. The jet lurches as both Nkiti. 4s leave the pylons. The nose jumps slightly. He counters with a touch of forward stick. 2 dark shapes drop, then quickly fade from view, accelerating toward the dome. In those milliseconds, the bombs are useless hunks of steel. Their fuses are still safe. Each has to fall roughly 800 meters for the arming vanes to spin, safety wires to pull, detonators to go live. Release at 500 feet gives just enough. Release too low, and they punch through concrete without exploding. Bombs gone, Yossii calls behind him, almost overlapping. 4, then 6, then 8 Nkiti. 4s from Razor's element fall in staggered pairs, a deadly staircase in the air. Now you may jink, Razor shouts. Avii hauls the stick, rolling left, yanking the nose up and away. Forces slam him into the seat, vision tightening. His roar wails as the Roland's radar tries to hold on, then abruptly quiets as his angle and speed drag him out of the beam. Behind him, in the Roland cabin, chaos blooms. Targets have dropped. The operator cries. Thayer pulling off hard. I've lost 1 lock node too. Stand by requiring. Samirr swears. Forget those 3. Shift to the trailing group. There are 4 more coming in. Thayer still in the envelope. On his scope, another cluster appears slightly further back. Avii's foreship. He knows his limitations. Roland's reload is manual. It takes his crew at least a minute to manhandle new missiles into the launchers, connect cables, run quick checks. He has already fired both ready rounds. "Get me tubes 3 and 4 loaded now," he shouts. "Move." His crew sprints, wresting missiles from crates, shoulders straining. They are fast, they are not fast enough. Tuwaitha Nuclear Research Center, 18:26:30 local. Inside the dome, engineer Ahmedd al Bayattii is reading a manual. He is 35, has a doctorate from Lyon, and dreams of running a safe, well-funded, peaceful reactor. He hears nothing over the whine of air conditioning and the rustle of paper. Then the world above him screams. The first of Razor's bombs hits the dome slightly low. External observers will later say it looks like a fist hitting an eggshell. The concrete top caves, rebar snapping like twigs. The bomb's hardened tip eats through, punching a ragged hole. Inside, for an instant, Ahmmed sees a bright, growing circle of daylight. Then the delayed fuse does its job. 30 milliseconds after impact, deep inside the structure, the bomb detonates. The explosion is a dull, body-felt thump that becomes a roar. Pressure waves slam through concrete corridors. Steel beams bend, lights blow out. Dust and smoke flood the dome as the roof disintegrates. Ahmmed is tossed from his chair, ears ringing, books airborne. He staggers to his feet in darkness, the air thick. A second impact follows, then a third. Each punch tears away more of the dome, then explodes lower, slicing through control rooms and equipment hall. Outside to Avi's eyes, the effect is sudden and terrible. The smooth white dome erupts in orange and gray. Huge chunks of concrete leap skyward, trailing dust. Flame licks from the ruptured internals. The entire top of the reactor bulges, then collapses, vanishing in a boiling cloud. He has no time to admire. He is already rolling level, nose up, throttling forward, yanking the Viper back toward the deck. Behind him, his own bombs are halfway down. The smoke plume blooming over the target is both a comfort and a new problem. "Fox 1, pull, pull, pull," Yossii yells. "You're shallow." Avii glances at his altimeter, 900 feet. That's lower than planned. He yanks harder. The meter spikes past 6. The desert horizon smears. Then he levels at 300 feet, the ground racing past again. "Fox, check 6, Razor calls. Coming alive." Artillery and machine guns around Tuwaitha, shocked by the explosions, now wake in anger. Barrels swing skyward. Tracers streak up, red and white lines, crisscrossing where the jets were seconds ago. But not where they are now. Many of the gunners fire blind into the smoke, muzzles chattering. Geometry betrays them. The Israelis are already pulling low and away, hugging the terrain, dropping out of the Ayaz depression angle. Inside the doke, Hassan watches the horror unfold in abstract. Baghdad doke, 18:27 local, impact near Tuwaitha. Someone shouts. On the big plot board, a red circle around Tuwaitha flashes. A liaison officer from the army yells into a phone, "We're getting reports of explosions at the nuclear center." On the radar scopes, the 8 hostile returns smear briefly as they dive, then reappear lower and faster, heading southwest. Track them, Hassan orders. "Get me, Al." "Rashid, where are my fighters?" A controller shouts back. 2 Mirages are airborne, sir, but they are north of Baghdad, Angels 20. They cannot see the attackers, the bombers are too low. Hassan thinks fast. Vector Mirages south have them drop to 10,000. Put Satwo sights along their egress route on full engagement. Have all batteries along the river fire on visual. He knows the Satwo cannot engage below about 800 feet. At these altitudes, it is almost useless. But if the Israelis climb, he snatches the phone again, calling Tuwaitha's local command. Roland battery report, static, then a voice, breathless. "This is Lieutenant Fadhull at Tuwaitha command. The reactor has been hit. Massive damage. I asked about Roland." Hassan snapped. "Captain Haddadd reports he fired 2 missiles, no kills, he is reloading." Hassan feels something hot and sour in his chest. 2 missiles, no kills. He wants to ask why. He wants to yell, but inside a small, icy voice whispers, "They only had a few seconds." And they still fired. He grinds out his cigarette. Tell him to be ready. If they turn back, he will get another chance and get medics to the center now. Tuwaitha Roland battery. 18:27:15 local. Samirr watches the target burn. He feels it in his chest like a personal failure. He almost does. Notice the second formation's bombs. The 8 Mkiti. Fours from Avis 4-ship hit a few heartbeats after razors. The smoke plume already obscures parts of the target. Avis assigned aim point. The western wall of the reactor hall is barely visible, a gray block in the swirling gray. He had studied it in photographs, a particular vent, a small annex. Now it's a memorized ghost. He trusts his training. He trusts the Yud. His 2 bombs spear into the smoke, disappearing from his view. Inside, they strike lower than razors, slamming into the sides of the structure, penetrating before exploding. Concrete walls shatter, the main hall buckles. 1 bomb from his element, dropped by number 4, is a meter off. It hits the already broken dome edge, clips rebar, and exits at a shallow angle. It becomes a 900-kilogram cannonball, skipping long over the target. It slams into an adjacent building, an auxiliary hall, and detonates, flipping vehicles, tearing through offices. Later, analysts will argue whether that bomb was a miss or a useful bonus. Ahmmed, crawling through dust in a side corridor, is dragged down again as this new explosion rips the floor and resettles the rubble. He hears screams. He hears someone praying. The air is unbreathable. Automatic sprinklers have failed. Fire alarms are silent. The only sound is the building dying. Outside, the sky over Tuatha is a pillar of black, tan, and orange. Samirr stands frozen for 3 seconds, watching the thing he has been told is his country's future shudder and fall. Then his training slaps him. Reload, he barks, "We are not done." Those planes are still in range. His crew shoves the 3rd missile into place on 1 launcher, locking the latches. Sweat drips into their eyes. Ready tube 3, the loader calls. Track, Samirr shouts. The operator swings the radar to the retreating contacts, now lower, faster, and further out. The scope shows them at the very edge of range. Range 6.2 kilometers and increasing, the operator says. They are leaving the envelope. Lock the closest. The beam chases the nearest 16 razors damaged wingman, slower due to his damaged hydraulics. The lock indicator flickers, catches. Lock achieved. Fire. Missile 3 launches, clawing into the air. Inside his cockpit, the wounded pilot's roar screams again. "Missile, missile," he shouts. "I have a Roland on my tail. Break right." Razor yells. Everyone else, maintain heading. Do not sacrifice your fuel. The wounded Viper rolls, dropping a few dozen feet, cutting altitude even more. He dumps flares useless against radar missiles, but his hands crave action. The Roland missile races forward. At these altitudes, its radar seeker fights the ground again, but the target's relative slowness helps. At 3 kilometers, the missile's proximity fuse circuitry arms. It is finally a live killer. Then terrain geometry steps in. The pilot swings his aircraft along a slight depression in the land, a low irrigation canal, the far bank just a few meters higher. For a second, as he banks, the earth rises between him and Samirr's radar. On the Roland's tracking screen, the signal dips. The operator curses, twisting knobs. The missile, blind for an instant, continues on its last trajectory. At 2 kilometers, it passes over the shallow canal, but now the 16 has cut inside its turn. The missile, too slow to respond, passes behind the tail by 20 meters and detonates in a rear quarter. The blast buffets the jet like a giant hand. Panels rattle. A thin crack appears in the canopy edge. But the 16 holds. Miss. The pilot yells, almost hysterical. "Im good." Hydraulics still low, but im good. Samirr slams his fist into the console. He knows there are many ways to lose a kill. He did not expect the shape of the land itself to steal this one. He turns to his crew. "Load the 4th, he says, hoarse. "We may yet get one more shot if they turn south toward Hilla." His crew rushes, but he suspects they will be too late. They are western egress south of Baghdad, 1828 local. The 16s are back in the weeds, level at 200 feet, noses pointed southwest. Behind them, Tuatha burns. A long smear of smoke marks their handiwork. Fox flight, check in, Razor says. 1, Fox 1, green, no hits, Avii says, voice shaky but controlled. 2, green, no damage. 3, that's Razor's wounded wingman. 3, yellow, the pilot replies. Hydraulic blow, some control stiffness, but I can hold. Fuel okay. 4 green. Razor exhales audibly. Good work all. Stay low, stay fast. Baghdad fighters are airborne, do not climb. We rendezvous at Point Cedar, no one goes off route. Avii glances at his fuel again. The numbers are not comforting. The climb and the hard jinx burned more than planned. His margin has shrunk. Fox 1, fuel edging into yellow, he says. Copy. Razor answers, we're all pretty. Stay disciplined, high above, the Iraqi fighter response takes shape. Al Rashid Air Base, 2018, 30 local. Minutes earlier, 2 Mirage Phoneek, his head clawed into the sky, climbing to their assigned cap altitude north of Baghdad. Their pilots expected the usual, fruitless patrol, Iranian ghosts on radar, nothing more. Now the Chi vector changes. Bandits multiple 8, low level, southwest of Baghdad. Heading to Nizero, the controller says, voice urgent. Descend to 10,000, intercept. Captain Farid Hassan, Mirage lead, curses. 10,000, he retorts. If they are low, we will never see them in time. Orders from sector, the voice says. The area is heavy with our Do not descend lower than 5,000, or you will be in friendly fire. Friendly fire. Farid glances down at the shimmering haze far below. Somewhere under that, the attackers streak, now already turning away. He has Matra 530 missiles on his pylons, semi-active radar homers. They need a solid radar lock and altitude to work best. The attackers offer neither. He noses down anyway, trading potential reprimand for speed. At 8,000 feet, the ground comes up faster. At 5, he levels off grudgingly, any radar contact. He asks his radar intercept officer. Negative, the man answers. Ground clutter, targets too low. Our radar cannot see past the horizon. Farid grinds his teeth. Below, the earth has wrapped the Israelis in a shield he cannot penetrate. Then we chase their likely egress, he says. We go southwest. Maybe we find them near the border if they climb. He pushes the throttle. The mirages roar toward empty sky. Baghdad Adok, 1830, 2 local. On Hassan's scopes, the Israeli returns flicker as they head out of his sector, always at the edge of detection. His Satwo batteries report no shot opportunities. The attackers never climb high enough for their envelope. Our units complain their tracers all fell short. The jets were there and gone before they could establish lead. Roland reports 3 missiles fired, all misses. The mirages report no visual. He knows in his bones the raid is over. Tuatha is burning on the TV feed from a distant news camera. Smoke rises like a wound into the evening sky. He turns to his staff. We have failed, he says simply. No one contradicts him. He stares at the radar horizon equation scribbled on the corner of his map. He had always thought of the Earth as their ally, masking his radars from Iranian threats creeping in along the valleys. Today, the Earth has been the enemy, hiding the attack until it was too late to react. He picks up the phone. He will have to call higher command. He will have to say the word Israeli and Reactor in the same sentence. He lights another cigarette with shaking hands over western Iraq, 1830, 5 local. The sun kisses the horizon, turning the world copper. The 16s, still at 200 feet, race that sun. Fox flight, check tanks, Razor says. Code only. 1, yellow, Avii says. 2, yellow. 3, yellow and dropping, wounded wingman reports. Hydraulic leak might be costing me some efficiency. 4, yellow. No one is green anymore. The careful fuel math from the briefing, done with clean profiles and conservative corners, has been eroded by real life. Jinx climbs, slightly higher drag from stores and damage. Razor's voice stays calm. We expected yellow here, he says. We planned for yellow. No one panics until red. Next checkpoint in 6 minutes. 6 minutes to the point where they turn slightly south, shaving a corner over Saudi airspace to cut distance home. 6 minutes in which any unplanned climb, any speed bleed, any wind shift can turn yellow into red. Fox 2, Avii says quietly on the intraflight channel, reserved for his foreship. How much cushion do you have? Enough to get home with fumes, Yossii answers. Assuming no detours, you'll be fine, Fox. Don't start thinking about looking for a Saudi runway for me. Avii doesn't laugh. He's already thinking about what desert patch looks survivable if someone has to punch out. Jordanian airspace control 1840, 2 local. The same bored radar operator at Osirak now stares at a different pattern. 8 fast returns, low level, streak back out of Iraqi airspace, cross the thin, symbolic line of the Jordanian border, and continue toward Israel. He hears soft cursing from his supervisor. Those are the same, the technician says. Same speed, same line. They went east, now they return. Iraqi air defense is calling, asking if we see anything. Tell Bod, and we saw nothing, the major says quietly. Sir, nothing, the major repeats. Civilian traffic only. Our radar is in maintenance. The technician nods slowly. He understands Jordan will not be caught between Israel and Iraq over a nuclear plant. He watches the 8 returns blur and vanish westward. Western Saudi Arabia, high above the deck. A Saudi radar operator meanwhile stares at his own scope, baffled at the fast, faint blips cutting across his airspace. He calls his supervisor. The supervisor calls his colonel. By the time they decide whether to scramble a pair of 15s, the intruders have already left. Etzian's runway is suddenly the most valuable piece of concrete on Earth. Over the Regevv 19, 5 local. The 16s cross back into Israeli airspace almost exactly on time, but time is not fuel. Fox flight, final fuel check. Razor says. There is steel under his comm now. 1, yellow, bordering red, Avii says. His gauge is in the last quarter. Digital estimate of remaining time reading 9 minutes at current burn. 2 solid yellow, Yossii reports. He'll get there. 3 red, Razor's wounded wingman says. I have about 7 minutes at this power setting. Am leaking a bit, I think. 4 yellow. Behind them, the escorting 15's hammer flight slide into a loose, high cover. Their own tanks still more than half full. They could loiter for an hour. Razor makes a decision. Fox 3, declare emergency fuel, he says. Tower will clear you straight in. Everyone else stick to the brake, do not cut other ships. We will not lose a jet to midair after surviving Baghdad. He switches to tower frequency. Etzian Tower, this is Razor 1, flight of 8 16s plus 2 15s, returning from long-range exercise, he says, using the euphemism. Copy, Razor 1, Tower replies. Call the field. Field in sight, Razor says. Be advised, Razor 3 is minimum fuel, minor battle damage. Request straighten approach, no delays. There's a pause as the controller parses battle damage without comment. Razor 3 cleared straight in runway 27, he says. All other Razors hold east as necessary. Avii grits his teeth as they approach. He can see the base now, a gray punctuation mark on the tan desert. He can also see Razor 3 already turning in early, cutting across their arrival path, engine throttled back, profile shallow. Fox 1, slow to spacing, Razor says. Well, stretch out the pattern. Every second at reduced power saves a drop of fuel. Every extra mile flown burns 10 drops. It's a knife each. Avii watches Razor, 3 touchdown, wheels squealing, chute popping. The jet rolls long but stays on the concrete. Fire trucks dart after him, sirens wailing, more for show than need. 3's down, Razor says. All Fox, cleared left brake, 2 ship intervals. Make it smooth, not pretty. Avii smiles despite himself. Smooth I can do. He crosses the runway threshold at 300 knots. Pulls up into a gentle left-hand brake. Bleeds speed, drops gear and flaps in a practice flow. The Viper settles, almost grateful to be back, where air is thick and speed is life, but no longer necessity. He flares slightly, wheels touch, tires chirp. As he rolls out, reverse thrust roaring, he glances at his fuel. 2 minutes remained. He taxis off, following a marshaller's wands, heart finally stepping back from his throat. Behind him, Yossii lands, then the others, an ordered procession of tired killers. Etzian flight line 19, 20 local. The canopy pops, noise from outside rushes in, engines, shouts, the distant bark of a dog. A ground crewman climbs the ladder, grinning wildly, eyes bright. How was your training flight, Major? He asks, voice too loud. Avii blinks in the sudden brightness. Uneventful, he says automatically, just some long-range navigation practice. The crewman laughs. They all know the script. They all see the scorch marks on the leading edges, the black smears on one jet's tail, the bomb racks suddenly empty. On the far side of the runway, a truck has already parked with a canvas-covered object inside. A camera, film-ready, to capture the strike footage from the gun tapes. In the debriefing room an hour later, they will watch the bombs drop again, this time in grainy monochrome. They will see the domes collapse frame by frame, analyze the hits, count the misses. They will realize that in 4 short seconds, the structure's fate was sealed. All the Roland missiles, fire, mirage sorties, political hesitation, and earth curvature were compressed into that. For now, Avii climbs down, legs suddenly weak. Yossii appears at his side, helmet dangling, hair plastered with sweat. "You see that missile?" Yossii says. "Thing went right past Razor, like a wild dog chasing a bus." "I saw enough," Avii answers. "Let's go tell them what we just did." He glances east, toward the invisible line that leads to Baghdad. Smoke from Tuwaitha will still be rising, a dark column against the twilight. He wonders, briefly, about the men who lived under that dome, the ones who designed the Roland battery, the fighters who scrambled too late. Half a world away, in a different room, those men are also coughing in smoke and staring at screens. Tuwaitha 19, 0 local. Fire trucks cluster around the ruins of the reactor. Water arcs into black gaps. The heat is still fierce. Samirr stands outside his radar cabin, uniform stained, hair singed. His crew moves like ghosts, stunned. The Roland launcher stands ready, 4th missile finally loaded. No targets remain. In the collapsing light, the reactor hull looks like a cracked egg, yolk burned, shell broken. Ahmd stumbles out with a handful of survivors, faces blackened, coughing. He looks at the shattered structure and understands instantly, in his scientific brain, and much later in his political one, that this project is dead. It took years to build. It took 4 seconds of bomb release to end. An ambulance pulls up. Medics swarm, triaging, bandaging, loading. Someone counts bodies in the rubble. Later, official communicus will say a small number of martyrs died. The real tally will be higher, full of technicians and guards and drivers who had no idea their workplace was on anyone's target list. Samirr walks toward the fire line. A colonel from the garrison intercepts him. "What happened to your missiles?" the colonel demands. "I saw one explode in the air, nowhere near the planes. The president will want answers." Samirr is too tired to be afraid. "They came in low, fast, and from the sunset," he says. "We had seconds. We fired 3 missiles. We got no kills. The terrain stole one. Their dive stole another. This is not an excuse. It is physics." The colonel glares. "Physics will not save your career," he spits. "Prepare your report. Headquarters wants it tonight." He stalks off. Samirr looks back at the launchers. He thinks of Toulouse, of clean classrooms and diagrams on chalkboards, of missiles arcing in pretty parabolas. No one there talked much about the way the Earth curves under a fast jet. But at Adok 19, 10 local, Hassann finishes his report. Words that will be read by generals and presidents and eventually historians are now just ink on paper. Enemy aircraft approached from bearing 230 at estimated altitude 5,100 meters. Due to radar horizon limitations, detection range was approximately 40 km for 12. Reaction time from detection to impact was less than 7 minutes. Air defense assets Roland and engaged but could not achieve kills before bomb release. Fighter interception, attempted geometry, and altitude mismatch prevented engagement. He adds, almost against his better judgment, current doctrine and equipment are insufficient to counter low altitude, high-speed penetration raids without additional early warning assets and integrated short-range systems. He knows what this means. He is not just reporting a failure. He is indicting an entire way of thinking on that assumed high-flying massed bombers, long detection times, and neat intercepts. He signs his name anyway. The room is quieter now. The adrenaline has burned away, leaving exhaustion. On the main display, a simpletive, tuned to state broadcasting's evening news anchor speaks in grave tones about a cowardly air raid by the Zionist enemy on one of our peaceful installations. There is no footage yet, only smoke in the distance. Hassann wonders how long it will take for the world to call to protest, to condemn. He wonders how long it will take before anyone realizes that this raid has changed the strategic clock in the Middle East. It is somewhere between those thoughts that his own fear creeps in. If they could reach Tuwaitha, what else can they reach? He crushes the thought. He still has a sector to defend. The night is coming, and Iran is still out there. He picks up a fresh cigarette. His match shakes only a little. Etzian debriefing room, 21-0 local. 8 pilots sit in a row, flight suits unzipped to the waist, faces drawn. On the wall, a screen shows frozen frames of a dome and 2 bombs falling. Intelligence officers and senior staff crowd the back of the room. The air smells of coffee and sweat. Razor stands at the front, pointer in hand. Ingress was on time, within 30 seconds of plan, he says. No radar detection until within roughly 40 kilometers of Baghdad as expected. Roland engagement occurred during dive. 2 missiles at lead element, 1 at second. No hits, 1 near miss. Minor damage to Razor 3. He taps the screen. Bomb impacts, 14 of 16 within the main target area. 2 driftodone hit the auxiliary hall, causing secondary damage, possibly to support functions. The dome was penetrated multiple times and the reactor hull is, by our preliminary assessment, destroyed. He looks at Avii. Fox 1, describe your run. Avii clears his throat. Pop-up at planned point, 500 feet, he says. Initial sight picture was good. Roland lock indicated mid-Avii, saw 2 missiles fired at lead element. Held profile until release Q, released at 6 degrees, about 540 knots. No release. Malfunction, pulled off hard right, then back down to 200 feet. He pauses, seeing again the first bomb punching through concrete. I saw initial explosions on the dome from Razor's bombs, then my own impacts inside the smoke, he adds. Opened up after we were already aggressing. An intelligence officer raises a hand. How effective did the Roland seem from your perspective, he asks. Avii thinks. Close enough, he says. If they had been a few seconds earlier, or if we had delayed our pop-up, they might have had more shots. Their tracking at low angle seemed not great. I got a spike, but no visual on the missile launch. My element, it seems they struggled with ground clutter. Razor nods. That tracks with our data, he says. Roland is dangerous, but it has its own constraints, minimum range, tracking limits at low elevation, and it needs time to cycle. Time we didn't give them. He turns to the others. You all did well. You held your nerve in the dive. No one broke off early. We came back with all 8 jets. He lets that sink in. The target is gone. Whatever they were building there will not see daylight. This buys us time. He doesn't say peace. No one in the room is naive enough to believe that. Questions, he asks. Yossii raises a hand, only one, he says. Whose idea was it to make us do that on 2 minutes of fuel? Laughter ripples, tired and shaky but real. Razor smiles faintly. Blame the planners, he says. We just execute. He catches Avi's eye. Later, when the room empties, he pulls him aside. You held a clean line, Razor says. That took guts with that Roland spike screaming at you. Avii shrugs. We all had the same equation, he says. Either we hold or we make another run and die. Razor nods. That's the difference, he says quietly, between an operation and a war. An operation, you choose your time, your route, your constraints. In a war, the enemy chooses for you. Today, we chose. He looks at the mission summary on the table. 8 jets, 16 bombs, 0 losses. He knows it could easily have read differently. In Baghdad the same night, a different debrief runs on a parallel track. Higher command rooms 21, 30 local. Samirr stands at rigid attention in front of a row of senior officers. Hassann is there, shoulders tired but eyes sharp. A general in a crisp uniform stares at a map of 2 Weitha pinned to the wall. You fired 3 missiles, the general says. All missed. Yes, sir, Samirr replies. They engaged the lead and trailing elements. The targets were at the limit of our engagement window. They were in a dive at low altitude, and our radar suffered significant ground clutter. The general snorts. Ground clutter, he repeats. You blame the dirt. Samirr swallows. With respect, sir, Roland is optimized for medium altitude targets. Against very low, high-speed aircraft in a diving attack, with minimal warning, its effectiveness is reduced. We need overlapping systems integrated with sector radar to have a better chance. Hassann speaks up gently. He is correct, he says. Our current network is built for a different air war. Their raid exploited that. They flew under our radar horizon until the last minute. Our fighters were too high. Our long-range SAMs had no shot. The general's jaw tightens. So we are helpless, he snaps. No, sir, Hassann says. We are unprepared. There is a difference. The general glares at him, then at Samirr, then at the map. You will write full technical reports, he says. Recommendations, changes, whatever, but understand this. The president will not accept excuses. He will demand accountability. He pauses. And he will want to know how it was that 8 foreign jets could fly across 2 countries, strike in the heart of Iraq, and leave unscathed. No one has a good answer. The physics of radar horizon, the complexity of integrated air defense, the real-time confusion between Iranian and Israeli threats. The human instinct to assume the familiar, all of these are explanations, none are excuses. Outside, the lights of Baghdad burn defiantly. Life continues, traffic, markets, families breaking fast. Above them, the sky is empty, quiet, and hostile. Those who understand what happened know that silence is temporary. What they do not know is that half a world away, another set of planners is already taking notes. The raid on Tuwaitha will be studied in war colleges and staff schools. It will be called many things, a violation of sovereignty, a preemptive strike, an act of war, and necessity. Pilots will remember it differently, as a mission where the ground itself was both enemy and ally, where a missile seeker and a bombs fuse and a tanker that wasn't there all shared equal billing, where 4 seconds in a dive defined decades of strategy, and where men like Avii and Samirr, on opposite sides of a radar horizon, did their jobs under constraints they didn't get to choose. 3 days later, the world knows. Television news in Europe and America carries blurred satellite photos of a broken dome near Baghdad. Anchors speak of an alleged nuclear research facility and a surprise airstrike by Israeli fighter bombers. Diplomats condemn. Some quietly applaud. At the United Nations, representatives take turns denouncing aggression and violation of sovereignty. Israel's ambassador sits behind his placard and says little. In Tel Aviv, the prime minister faces cameras. He chooses his words carefully. We will not allow a hostile regime to acquire weapons that can threaten our existence, he says. We acted in self-defense. Our pilots executed a difficult mission with extraordinary professionalism. He does not mention that one Roland missile came close enough to crack a canopy, or that one F-16 landed with less than 2 minutes of fuel. Those details stay in squadron bars and classified debriefs. In Baghdad, the president appears on state television, jaw clenched. The Zionist entity has committed a cowardly attack on our peaceful nuclear project, he says. They have not stopped our progress. They have awakened our resolve. Behind him, footage loops of smoke rising from Tuwaitha. No close-ups, no bodies, no Roland launchers. Inside the Air Defense Command, Hassann and Samirr watch the broadcast together, standing at the back of a crowded room. He says we will rebuild, Samirr murmurs. Hassann exhales smoke. Of course he does, he says. We will pour more concrete. We will buy more missiles. We will put more men between the enemy and the president's dreams. He nods at the radar scopes. But the horizon will still be there. Samirr looks at him. Can we beat it? He asks quietly. The horizon, the way they came, Samirr says. Low, fast, invisible until the last minute. Can we stop that next time? Hassann thinks of his report, now somewhere in the ministry, perhaps already being buried under more politically comfortable narratives. Yes, he says slowly, but not with 1 Roland and 2 Mirages. We would need long-range OX radar, low-level coverage, infrared search, more overlapping short-range systems. We would need integration, discipline. No, one system can't do it alone. He smiles bitterly, and we would need someone to listen. Samirr looks back at the burning dome on the screen. In France, he says, they told us Roland could handle anything. They did not talk much about what happens when your engagement window is 4 seconds. Engineers don't like talking about seconds. Hassann says they like talking about specifications. They stand in silence. In another air force, in another culture, men are making the opposite argument, that a handful of well-flown jets, correctly routed and constrained, can punch above their weight if the geometry is right. Time rolls forward. The raid on Tuwaitha becomes a case study, then a precedent. Somewhere over Nevada years later, American pilots practice long-range strikes with phone 111s 50, 2s and 15Es, running low-level ingress profiles against simulated SAM belts. The instructors mention an Israeli raid that slipped under Iraqi radars and smashed a reactor. They draw the same radar horizon equation on whiteboards. They underline the same conclusion. If you own the approach, and you understand the enemy's constraints better than he understands yours, you write the script. Iraq tries to rewrite its own mid-1980s Iraqi air defense modernization. French technicians arrive. New radars sprout across the desert. Sector operation centers gain more consoles, more screens, more links. Iraqi officers learn new acronyms. Karai, the French code name for the Integrated Air Defense Network, later known in the West as Iraqi IADIS. The idea is simple. Tie everything together. Feed early warning radars, sector control, fighter direction, and SAM batteries into one architecture. Close the seams that 8 Israeli jets slipped through. On a training range south of Baghdad, Samirr trains crews on updated Roland procedures, faster reload drills, better sector scanning, refined engagement doctrine. Do not wait for orders from Baghdad, he tells his teams. Our chain of command is slow. If you see low-level fast movers, you fire. We do not get second chances. One of the younger sergeants raises a hand. Sir, what if they are our own aircraft? He asks. Samirr meets his eyes. Then they will learn to call us, he says, or they can explain to the president why they flew without a clear corridor. The sergeants nod. They have heard enough stories from Tuwaitha to understand that hesitation can be as fatal as friendly fire. In the Doak, Hassann sees new displays show low-altitude coverage from gap-filling radars. He sees simulation tracks of hostile jets detected further out, interceptors vectored earlier. On paper, the next Israeli raid would be seen in time, on paper. He writes more recommendations. He retires in 1988, just as the war with Iran ends. His hair is thinner, his face is lined. He leaves behind a stack of memos about low-altitude threats and the limits of radar. They collect dust on shelves. Avii, in the same years, moves on as well. Late 1980s, IAF Pilot's Lounge. He sits with younger pilots, beer sweating on the table, television flickering muted in the corner. They bug him for stories. Tell us about the long flight, one lieutenant says. How low did you go? Avii smiles. You already know the numbers, he says. You've flown the profile, 200 feet, sometimes less where the terrain allowed. That's a number, the lieutenant says. What did it feel like? Avii thinks. Imagine you are in a car, he says. At 200 kilometers an hour, on a narrow road, with someone throwing rocks at your windshield, and you're not allowed to slow down because if you do, a truck behind you will run you over. He sees their faces half-awed, half-skeptical. He sighs. It felt like a job, he says. A dangerous one, yes, but a job. You focus on the next checkpoint, the next altitude, the next fuel call. You don't have room in your head for fear until later. He does mention the moment when his thumb hovered over the stick, wanting to pull away from the Roland lock, when 4 seconds stretched like a lifetime. He keeps that for himself. One of the younger men leans in. Would we do it again, he asks. If another reactor appeared somewhere, Avii looks at him. I think the question is not would, he says. It's could. He gestures at a poster on the wall, an artist's rendering of a future aircraft with strange angles and hidden intakes. The next time, he says, it may not be low and fast. It may be high and invisible, but the constraints will still be there. Fuel, timing, one pass. They never go away, only the tools change. Time advances again. January 17th, 1991. The skies over Iraq are full once more. Coalition aircraft flood north, their paths plotted by satellites, their altitudes managed by OX, their targets stored in digital whispers. 15 knees and tornadoes and phone 117 streak in at low and medium altitudes. Harm missiles arc toward radars. Cluster bombs chew runways. Tomahawks arrive on their own, hugging valleys and crossing deserts with terrain matching guidance. Roland batteries older now but still lethal in theory. Power up when told, then power down in panic when their operators see Igmati. 8's riding their emissions. One night south of Baghdad, a Roland crew hears their warning receiver scream. Anti-radiation missile inbound. The captain, not Samirr, who has been shifted to a staff job, orders a radar shutdown. The missile, deprived of its guiding beacon, hunts on inertial, then dives on the last known position. It detonates 50 meters away, showering the launcher with shrapnel that disables but does not destroy. The crew lives. They never fire a shot that night at the phone, 111s that thunder past in the dark. The Earth still curves, but the coalition has thrown so many eyes into the sky that radar horizon is less of a sanctuary. Geometry has grown three-dimensional. Space-based sensors look down from far above the curve, yet constraints remain. 1/16th, dodging trying to get a shot on a bridge, drops low too low, and hits a cable, ejecting moments before impact. A brightish tornado, forced to climb slightly by unexpected terrain, wanders into a Sethri's envelope and pays the price. For all the new technology, men still bleed at the intersections of altitude, speed, and time. In an Iraqi bunker, older officers watch glowing symbols vanish from the screen and remember another raid, another night, another set of tracks that came in low and left unmolested. Osirak, someone mutters, the name sticks. After the war, analysts on all sides draw lines of continuity. They talk about the lessons of 1980, one in dense papers. They note that Osirak taught that preemption works if done early, that a small, precise strike can change strategic trajectories. They note that it also accelerated dispersal underground, hardening concealment. They note that Iraq's response was to pour money into an IAD, that was still, in the face of a fully networked enemy, insufficient. In a different sense, they say, the raid showed that the decisive factor is not a single missile or bomb, but the system that carries it. Training, doctrine, discipline, timing. Samirr reads some of these assessments years later, in a foreign magazine smuggled in by a friend. He snorts at the diagrams that show his Roland battery as a neat symbol in a box, engaged, no effect. They don't show the sweat. Or the seconds. He retires quietly in the late 1990s, a colonel with a decent pension and a fading bitterness. Sometimes, on walks along the Tigris, he looks up at the endless sky and wonders about the men who flew over him that day. He knows nothing about Avii. He imagines a pilot about his age, maybe a bit younger, sitting down somewhere in a house near Tel Aviv, watching the same global news he does, seeing newer wars and newer bombs. He wonders if that pilot still hears warning receivers in his dreams. Avii, for his part, has his own nights. He leaves active flying in the mid-90s, moves into training, then eventually into civilian life. He consults for a defense company, gives talks at Air Force events. At one such gathering, a young navigator approaches him. "Sir, I just got back from a course in the States," the younger man says. "They showed us a case study of your mission. They called it Operation Opera." Avii smiles at the name. "It was not what they called it then. They say it was perfect." The navigator continues. "No losses, main target destroyed. They make it sound clean." Avi's smile fades. "Did they show you the Roland missile?" he asks. The navigator blinks. "The what?" "The SAM that missed by less than a second," Avii says. "No? Then it wasn't a full case study." He leans forward. "Listen, no mission is perfect. It may look like it on paper afterward, but in reality, it's a pile of close calls and little miracles on top of hard training. Don't ever treat someone else's success as something inevitable. It makes you lazy." The younger man nods slowly. "What do you remember most?" he asks. Avii doesn't hesitate. "The first time I saw the reactor dome," he says. "For weeks it was just a photo on a wall. Then suddenly it was real, and I knew that when I hit that pickle button, whatever lived under that dome would die or not because of how straight I held the line." He pauses, and the fuel gauge on final, 2 minutes remaining. "Don't let anyone tell you that part was glamorous." They both laugh. He does mention the flash of guilt that sometimes flashes when he thinks of the people inside Tuatha who never saw the raid coming. He has compartmentalized that, as soldiers do. History moves on. The reactor is never rebuilt. Iraq pursues other paths in secret, then is interrupted by wars and inspections and politics. The name osirak becomes shorthand for a toolbox option in strategic planning rooms. If you can find it, if you can reach it, and if you can afford the consequences, you can hit it. If the constraints never go away. Years later, in a university lecture hall far from any airbase, a defense studies professor draws a simple sketch on a whiteboard, a circle for a radar, a curved line for the Earth, a little arrow. For a low-flying aircraft, he writes underneath, radar horizon Napothirth Ingress. On his slide, 2 photos, one, black and white, of the shattered dome at Tuatha. The other, infrared footage of a modern strike somewhere else, bombs blooming precisely on coordinates. Technology evolves, he tells his students, but the core problem is the same. How do you put iron on target through a defended airspace without losing too many aircraft? He clicks. A timeline appears. 1981, Israeli 16s over Osirak. Low-level manual nav stopwatch. 1991, coalition over Iraq. Mix of low-level and medium. Multitude with OAX and harms. 21st century, standoff weapons, stealth. Samirr Haddadd, he turns to the class. What changed, he asks. Hands go up. Aircraft performance, weapons accuracy, intelligence quality, all correct, he says. But what matters more is that the attacker system training, planning, technology, and political will outpace the defender system. At Osirak, 8 jets beat an entire nation's air defenses, not because those jets were magical, but because their pilots understood the defenders' constraints better than the defenders understood their own. He points at the radar horizon line. They knew this math, he says. They knew Roland's min range and reaction time. They knew their fuel margins to the minute. They rode those constraints harder than the Iraqi side did. He pauses. And on the ground, men like Hassann and Samirr also understood constraints. He says, they knew their radars couldn't see over the horizon, that their fighters were too high, their short-range SAMs too few. They did what they could inside those limits. They were not fools. They were outsystemed. In the back row, a young student raises a hand. Is that the lesson then, he asks, build better systems? The professor smiles a little. It's part of it, he says. But remember where the system begins, with people. Someone had to strap into those 16s and fly 0 kilometers at 100 feet. Someone had to stand in a Roland cabin and fire a missile at jets coming straight at the heart of his country. They didn't choose the constraints. They just lived inside them. He clicks off the projector. Next week, he says, well, look at a different kind of strike. One where the attackers didn't understand the defenders' constraints and paid for it. Students file out. On screen, in the professor's notes, a line remains highlighted. Cold open. Low ingress, no climb, 1 pass. The same skeleton, wrapped in different flesh. Back in Israel, Avii sits at a family dinner. Grandchildren noisy around him. One of them, a boy of 10, asks why there is a model airplane on the shelf. That's the one Saba flew, his daughter says. When he was in the Air Force, the boy's eyes widen. Did you shoot down bad guys? He asks. Avii thinks of MiGs and Syrian skies, but also of one long flight east, of bombs falling on a place whose workers had no idea he existed. I drop bombs on buildings, he says, because my country asked me to. Did you win? The boy asks. Avii smiles sadly. On that day, he says, yes, we did what we set out to do, but winning is not just one day, it's what happens after. He glances at the evening news on the TV in the corner. Another report from another front, different flags, same dust. His grandson has already turned back to his toy. In Baghdad, in a small apartment with patchy power, Samirr watches similar news on a different channel years later, now an older man with a cane. A commentator talks about deterrence, preemption, red lines. The words wash over him. He pours tea, sits, and hears again the noise of the generator, the whine of the Roland radar spinning up, the shouted range calls, the feeling when the missile missed. He doesn't think of politics. He thinks of seconds, 7 minutes from first detection to impact, 4 seconds in the dive. 2 minutes of fuel at the end, numbers that decided lives. At the end of the day, on both sides of the radar horizon, men measure war in those small slices of time. In 1981, the skies over Tuatha tilt toward the pilots who rode their constraints harder. They came in low, forbidden to climb. They stayed under the radars until the last moment. They had 1 pass, 1 bomb pair each, 1 chance to slip between min-range and max-range, between arming distance and friendly fuel. They took it. The defenders fired what they had, when they could, from where they were. They missed narrowly, and in war, narrowly is sometimes the only difference between a hero's medal and a footnote. The dome fell. The world changed by a degree. Looking back, with the comfortable certainty of hindsight, People call the raid inevitable, or reckless, or brilliant. From inside the cockpits and radar cabins, it was none of those things. It was just men and machines, pressed hard against unyielding numbers, trying to bend them enough to life. What moment surprised you most? Did the constraints decide the battle or the people? Like, subscribe, and tell me which operation to cover next. Your comments shape the next mission.